Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Thanks for tuning in. Got another great show lined up for you this week. I know you'll think so after viewing it. Kent McCausland going to join us here in just a moment. Former sharpshooting great for the Iowa Hawkeyes. As I've mentioned in weeks past with Jess Settles, Kent and Jess, part of the last group of Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball players that have made a Sweet 16, 1999. Tom Davis's exodus and exit from Iowa City that year. And we're going to talk with Ken a little bit about that as we have in the past, but how the prospects look for this year for hopefully Franz guys moving on to a Sweet 16. They're going to have to go through probably number one Houston to get there. But we'll get to all that in just a few minutes. And then after Kent, we'll talk with Kenny Smith. And Kenny, of course, is the very fine Iowa beat writer for covering Hawkeye sports for the Moines Register, USA Today, and Hawk Central. Today is March 13th, lucky number 13, as everybody's getting ready to head to Birmingham, Alabama. So we've got to get the show recorded a day earlier this week. Usually we record on Tuesdays, but we were recording this on Monday afternoon, March 13th. So got my green on for the Irishman, Kent McCausland, and me, Dave O'Hara. Also getting ready for golf, Kent, for the Masters. I see you smiling with me. So first of all, thanks for joining us. And secondly, how's everything going with you, Kent?
No, everything's going well. We sprung forward, so now that means we're getting ready for golf, which I'm okay with that. Let's get this white stuff out of here and get on the golf course. And the Masters always tells us that golf is around the corner here in Iowa. So always got good spirits at this time of year.
But let's you and I talk basketball. And when I talked to Jess Settles last week, and I've talked to you in the past about this, it still blows my mind that we're going on 24 years, and hopefully the curse is broken and the Hawks can go to a Sweet 16. But talk about that experience for us briefly, if you would, that Jess mentioned last week. I remember you guys lost to the eventual national champions and Rip Hamilton and UConn. But yeah, he had mentioned, and I didn't realize that Gary Close and all the assistants and Tom Davis basically had everything cleaned out because they knew once you lost, they were gone.
Yeah, it was certainly an odd feeling after losing that game in Phoenix against Connecticut, in a game where we were certainly in the hunt there, as the last, 5 to 10 minutes, there were opportunities. And, you feel like if a couple things go your way, you have a chance to win. But at the same time, you're playing against Richard Hamilton, Khalid El-Amin, Jake Boskel, Richard Freeman, I think was maybe. Yeah, anyway, Freeman was his last name, but really good athletes, really good basketball team. They ended up winning the whole thing, and I would say at times you just felt like, well, this is a pretty good basketball team. We got a shot, but we needed some things to go our way. They didn't, and we didn't get that win. But I just remember that bus ride. It's really hard as an athlete that it's your last game. It's the last time you're putting that jersey on. It's the last time you're with the guys in the bus. And there was a certain feeling of finality to it, very difficult to deal with, even like years after. You're a basketball player your entire life. And so you lose that last game, and all you want to do is be a Hawkeye since you were, 4 years old. And so it comes to an abrupt end because you really don't ever think it's ever going to end, because you always have that optimistic view that you're going to win. You prepare to win. Coach Davis, the whole coaching staff, they prepare you to win. And had a great run in Denver, obviously, to get to the Sweet 16.
Let's talk of this year's Hawkeyes. And when you take a look at what's happened with them, Ken, you can't, I shouldn't say can't, it's difficult to grasp as a fan how you lose 2 games to Wisconsin, who is in the NIT, and how you lose 2 games to Nebraska. It's just really hard to get a vision on this team and what's happening and where it's going.
Yeah, there's a lot to pick apart there. And if you followed another team in the Big Ten, probably minus Purdue, you watched every team, you watched the Big Ten schedule, and we focus on Iowa because we're Iowa fans. But if you focus on any team, there have been runs where they played extremely well, and then other times where they just go out and lay an egg. Look at Indiana. At Indiana, Iowa comes out and just smokes them. So they had come off a huge win against Purdue. They come home, you think, well, this is going to be tough. Iowa hasn't played well on the road all year long. They haven't shot the ball well. Well, then they come out and just light it up. So I like it because it at least proves that Iowa can go do it on the road, because all the big games are going to be on the road. They're either going to be in the Big Ten tournament or now into the NCAA. So you got to prove that you can do it on a neutral floor. And we're gonna see. You don't know which team's going to show up, which Tony Perkins is going to show up, which Peyton Sanford's going to show up. You just don't know, because these are young kids, and they're doing the best they can to execute a a game plan by Coach Fran and his staff. Still, a fifth place finish in this Big Ten, I think, is a really good accomplishment. Yeah, do you want to win 2 games and get to a Sweet 16? Heck yeah, you do. And do you want to get through an 8-9 game and have a chance at a 1 and anything can happen? You bet. So against an Auburn team that's defensive minded, I think it's really just gonna be about, can you make shots? Can you speed up the game and get some tempo going and play that Iowa style? And I think if they can, we'll see a good outcome. But we know defense is king in March at times, and so that makes me a little nervous. Playing Auburn in Alabama, right? There's going to be an Auburn contingent, but as I've seen today a little bit on Twitter, maybe Iowa's trying to recruit some Alabama fans to come root for them down there in the game.
Yeah, well stated, and I'm smiling because I'm thinking of what I'm about to say to you, and I know you've got some things to say about this. But again, he's Kent McCausland, former sharpshooting great with the Iowa Hawkeyes, and you'll see all of Kent's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine throughout this segment. And the reason I want to mention that again is check out Kent's show. It's on MC22 or Mediacom, and it's Kent's going to be taking a deep dive into the Hawks as well with our good buddy Rob Brooks, and you guys do a great job on that show, taking a deep dive into the black and gold. But I'm smiling primarily because of Bruce Pearl. When you mentioned Auburn, I noticed you left that name out, and you're nodding a little bit and smiling. And I'll just say this, fans, because we don't have enough time in this show to get into Bruce Pearl in Iowa, so that whole story, just Google Bruce Pearl, Iowa, and you'll have everything. Give us your take on Bruce Pearl, Iowa, this game, the whole general scheme of Bruce Pearl, please, Kent.
Yeah, I think Bruce Pearl is well-loved by kind of AC Earl and that crew before, right? So anybody before that got to be around Coach Pearl, they rave about it. And so I actually got a chance to interact with Bruce Pearl a lot at Iowa, because he came back and did basketball camps in the summer. And this was when we had 500 kids running around Iowa City. And we would work the camp. And Coach Pearl was at Southern Indiana, I believe, Division II, and was working his way back up after what you would call maybe a couple of issues in the recruiting world that people can find out about. So, he was working his way back up, and this guy is charismatic. You just love to play for him. He'll run through a wall for him. And you may hate him, I don't know, as an Iowa fan you're watching, but, to be honest, I think he had a great stint at Iowa under Coach Davis, knows the game, works really hard, recruits really hard, maybe recruits on the edges a little bit. And with NIL now, maybe there aren't any edges. Maybe you can go do whatever you want anymore.
Eyes are all blurred, Ken.
Right. So I think I'm a big fan of Bruce Pearl. I think he's a very good coach, a good basketball mind, and have always enjoyed being around him. And so when I was around him in those camps, you just want to do, hey, he says you're doing this, you go do it, because he's just got that way about him, and all of his players loved him in Iowa. So it'll be a good battle, and just again a contrast in styles, that defensive style that Pearl's bringing to Auburn against Coach Fran and his offensive up tempo. So it's a great contrast. It should be a very good game.
But Kent, I want to check back with you later on this year and put kind of a bow on this season. You did this for us last year as well. We've had all the former players on you, Jess Settles, Jeff Horner, Adam Haluska. Really like to get your takeaway on not just the season in general, but the second season, as they call this, Kent, now, as we get rolling here into the postseason. So he is Kent McCausland, former Iowa Hawkeye basketball sharpshooting great. Kent, thank you so much. And again, be sure to check out Kent's show. You see all his information at the bottom of the screen along with mine throughout this segment. And black and gold all the way through, Ken. So thank you so much and look forward to talking to you soon.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope the next time we talk, maybe we got a Sweet 16 under our belt, the first time since '99, right? So that'd be great.
Right. I don't have to mention you and Jess Settles anymore in that respect. You're exactly right, Ken. So, hey, thanks again for Kent McCausland. I'm Dave O'Hara, and Hawkeye will be back with more to close out the show with Kenny Smith from the Moines Register, USA Today, and Hawk Central. Back with more in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Chevrolet. We've lived through some very interesting times the last few months. Ensuring everyone's safety is more important than ever. That is why we are participating in the Chevy Clean program. At your request, we will pick up your vehicle, service it, and return it after we've cleaned it using the current CDC guidelines. This is just another way to work towards exceeding your expectations. So give us a call and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Here's our buddy Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III, with the Des Moines Register USA Today and Hawk Central. Kenny, my friend, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good seeing you again. Thanks for doing this, as always. Well, I start a lot of segments with you with the big exhale of, well, so much to get to you about, as always. Just talked to Kent McCausland about Hawkeye men's basketball, but I'd be remiss if you and I didn't talk a little bit about Hawks men's basketball, but I also want to talk women's basketball with you today, Bluters Bunch. I want to let everybody know all 10 Hawkeye wrestlers, Brands boys. I know you did a podcast today with Dargan Southard from the Des Moines Register and Chad Leistikow today. We're recording this on Monday, March 13th, Monday afternoon. Kenny, the Hawks rolling into another national tournament, all 10 wrestlers qualified. But let's start with men's basketball, then we'll go to Bluters Bunch. So the men with the 8th seed playing Bruce Pearl's Auburn Tigers from your native area of the country in the SEC land in Alabama. The 9 seed Auburn only has an hour and a half, 2-hour commute where Iowa's going halfway across the country. How's this matchup for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is the fact that they're playing in Birmingham should not be understated. It is going to be a road game for Iowa, especially when you think about Bruce Pearl and the excitement that he's injected into that program. I think that it will be a very pro-Auburn crowd. The way that I see this matchup is Auburn and Iowa are kind of inverses of each other. You have Iowa, high-octane offense, usually lack on the defensive end, and Auburn is a great defensive team that struggles to score the ball. They struggle to shoot the ball. They have an undersized backcourt, which kind of limits what they can do on both sides of the court. So for me, I think this is the matchup where Iowa's backcourt really has to win that matchup, and they really have to get off to a great start offensively. I think that if Iowa can get off to a good start and build an early lead, Auburn does not have the firepower to score basket for basket with Iowa. But if Auburn's defense is able to settle in, if they're able to play the game at their pace, I think ultimately it comes down to who's going to be able to dictate the pace the fastest. And if Auburn behind that crowd is able to make it a defensive struggle and it's in the 50s, 60s scoring range into the second half, then things could get a little hairy for Iowa. But if they come out, hit their shots, and get the offense flowing, get Chris Murray going, and if the backcourt can provide some offense, then I think Iowa should be in good position to win.
You know, it's interesting as we go into full-bore March Madness mode here, again with the National Wrestling Tournament this upcoming weekend. You know, a week from today is the first day of spring. And, of course, we'll have March Madness with the men's and women's programs, as well as baseball and softball in full swing here, as we mentioned, pun intended. Let's you and I talk the women's tournament and Bluters Bunch. And, yeah, everybody was hoping for a 1 seed, but they're the number 1-2 seed. Talk about your thoughts, and you'll be following and staying with the Iowa team here in Iowa City.
Yeah, that's right. I will be in Iowa City following the women in the first 2 rounds. I think that they had the right temperament after the selection. They said when you're thinking about the lowest 1 seed, the highest 2 seed, there really isn't much of a difference there. Right. Ultimately, you're going to have to be good teams in front of you, and that's the challenge that Iowa has. I think that they very much are taking the keeping their feet where they're planted attitude. I think last year, and when you listen to them talk about the Creighton loss, I think there was a little bit of aspect of looking ahead a little bit to the Sweet 16 and to the Elite Eight and what could be. And I think it's very much opposite this year. I think they're very focused on the task at hand. And there's going to be dangerous teams in that second round pairing. I mean, Florida State, top 5 team in the ACC. Georgia has Katie Abrahamson Henderson, who is an Iowa alum, class of 90, who rebuilt the program at Central Florida and is in her first year at Georgia and has got them into the tournament as well. So they're going to face a Power 5 opponent in that second game, and it's going to be a tough one. So yeah. I think they're focused on the task at hand, and they'll worry about, you know, potentially Duke in the Sweet 16 or number 1 seed Arizona in the Elite Eight when it comes. Interesting you mentioned Katie Abrahamson because she's a Cedar Rapids area prep as well, like Lisa Bluter, like Brenda Fries at Maryland. So a lot of Cedar Rapids talent there in women's basketball. But Kenny, of course, the national conversation goes to Player of the Year. Aaliyah Boston from South Carolina, Caitlin Clark, Iowa. A lot of the national voices are still, and even after Carolyn Peck was here, the famous broadcaster for ESPN women's basketball and won a national title at Purdue. She knows Big Ten country. She still says Aaliyah Boston, hands down, no question.
Where do you come down on this? And I know it's the postseason, and why are we talking about this? Let's worry about Bluter's Bunch as a team. But to me, it comes down to national recognition. And I've seen Aaliyah Boston play a bunch on TV, never in person like I have Caitlin Clark. Two entirely different players. One is more of a team concept. I look at most valuable player as where is that team without that player?
Right.
I think South Carolina still clips along, maybe not to the undefeated level, number one in the country they are. But without Caitlin Clark, Iowa's a good team. But where do you come down on this with the National Player of the Year with Caitlin Clark or Aaliyah Boston?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think I look at it as who is the most valuable player to their team.
Absolutely.
And this is not meant to take away from Aaliyah Boston,
At
obviously,
all.
because she's a great player. But South Carolina, if you look at their starting lineup, even if you look at players on the bench, they have number one and number two options throughout their roster. They recruit at the highest level. There are great players on that team that allow Aaliyah Boston to do what she does, and her being the best player on the best team obviously gives her that recognition. But I think when you think about what Caitlin Clark means to Iowa and what she's expected to do every game, when South Carolina plays against an elite team like an LSU, Aaliyah Boston can afford to not score in double digits and grab maybe just 10 rebounds because she has those elite players around her. When Caitlin Clark is playing against an Indiana, a Maryland, when she goes into the NCAA tournament, there's going to be an expectation for her to score over 30 points, to have near 10 assists and near 10 rebounds and play efficiently and not turn the ball over because of everything that she's required of within her system. And then when you think about Iowa not recruiting at the same level as the South Carolina, they are still one of the premier programs in the country, ranked in the top 5, back-to-back Big Ten champions, and have played at that high stage. And a lot of that has been because Caitlin Clark's been the catalyst of that. So that's where I lie on the National Player of the Year discussion. I think that it's Caitlin Clark's time to win. I
agree.
That she had a great case to win last year. Went to Aaliyah Boston. I feel like her following it up with another Big Ten championship and what she's doing this year, it's just her time to win the award.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, and Caitlin Clark did too. You'd rather play them later as the brackets go on, but you're going to have to face South Carolina eventually, Stanford, UConn, regardless. So, you've done a great job of laying this out for the Iowa Hawkeye women's team. And when we come back, viewers got one more segment with Kennington Lloyd Smith III, or Kenny Smith with the Des Moines Register and USA Today and Hawk Central. You see all Kenny's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine through the next 2 segments. And Kenny, we're going to come back and talk some football.
All right,
some good, some, as you're chuckling with me, not so good, but we got to get through it. That's right, it's all good. Yeah.
Good.
So for Kenny Smith, I'm Dave O'Hara, and Hawkeye will be back with more in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Automotive Family. Our commercial truck departments are growing. With the availability of the Ram 45 5500 or the Chevy 45 to 6500, we can build the right truck for your needs. From dry freight boxes to custom rancher goosenecks, your options are unlimited. So stop in and let us show you what it means to be part of the larger Tice Automotive family.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seat company that's chasing technology, or a seat company that's writing a book on it? Merschman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Merschman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Kenny Smith stayed over for a second segment. Kenny, good to have you. Thanks again for staying along with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's talk some Hawkeye football. By the way, viewers, I want to remind you, again, you'll see Kenny's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine for the last 2 segments, the segment before this and this segment. Be sure to check it out because Kenny wrote a great piece on the Murray twins. Always something happening with Iowa Hawkeyes. Chris was first-team All-Conference, All-Big Ten. Congratulations to him. Third-team All-American, so far. Much more awards to come postseason, obviously. Peyton Sanford, congratulations. Peyton on the show a couple of weeks ago. 6th Man of the Year award in the Big Ten. So Hawkeye men's basketball and women's basketball have the 6th Player of the Year award. And let's you and I talk a little bit about Hawkeye football and what happened last week. A week ago today, we record this on Monday, March 13th. Normally we record on Tuesday afternoons, but because of travel and March Madness and everything, we're going a day early this week. So as we record this on Monday afternoon, March 13th, what are your thoughts a week ago when all the news came out with Gary Barta and some state administrators and legislatures said, let's settle the lawsuit and pay $4.2 million. It looked like if it had gone to court, and you saw Kirk Ferentz's comments, hey, we don't want to settle. We think we'll be, he thought he and the coaches would be exonerated. he and his assistants, Chris Doyle, Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz, and the rest of them. What are your thoughts on this and how it played out, and the about face of BARDA going to the state of Iowa saying, hey, and the state of Iowa saying, yeah, we'll give you half. We'll give you the $2 million. And then president of the University of Iowa said, no, we're going to pay the full bill ourselves, the $4 million. So talk about all this going on in the last week, Kenny, please.
There's a lot of different ways to go based off of that. I think that my initial reaction to it was, I think you have to look at this and say that multiple things can be true at once. I think that when you look at it from the player side who was suing the players, the school and the football program, there were undeniably elements of the football program that were not fully inclusive to everyone. And I think when you look at the changes that were made initially to the program to make it a more inclusive and comfortable environment for everyone, that it lends itself to that. There was some cultural issues within the program, and I don't think that maybe it necessarily rises to the indictment of, removing Kirk Ferentz as head coach, because obviously there were a lot of players, black and white, who backed Kirk Ferentz. And I think that when you look at the players' case against the football program and the university, there wasn't really that smoking gun to take it to the point that they wanted to take it to. So I think that, a few things can be true. I don't think that Kirk and Brian and Doyle in the program are completely innocent, but I don't think it was, all the way to the point where you need to completely clean house of the leadership within Iowa's program. I was a little disappointed in Kirk's statement where he said that there was no wrongdoing there, because when I got your reaction, I wanted to hear that. I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes, that's what really got my attention as well. Yeah, I think that was, was a tad tone deaf, I think. I think when you go back and listen to how Kirk spoke at the beginning of this in 2020 and the changes that were made, he pointed to the blind spots that he didn't see and the changes that were necessary to be made. And then a few years later, he's talking about there was no wrongdoing. So in a way, it makes me question if he was making those changes because his feet were against the fire, or he genuinely felt like there were cultural issues within the program. So I was a little disappointed in that part of the statement. I mean, in terms of feeling that they were going to be exonerated, I think he's entitled to that opinion, and I'm not as locked into the details of it as his legal team, obviously. But I think that putting him on the stand, Brian, anybody involved in that could have opened up a can of worms that maybe he is not anticipating. So I think ultimately the decision to settle was the right one, and I think the overall point of this, and what should be the point from the player side and from the university side, is to make Iowa football more inclusive and more comfortable for everyone. That should be the goal of the players bringing these complaints out, is to change the football program. And from the football program side, if these complaints are being drawn against them and multiple players are coming and speaking out about it, then you should want to change your program. And I think that's what Iowa has done. It really hasn't hurt them in recruiting. It seems like, Iowa's recruiting at a high clip even after these allegations. Now that the settlement is done, I expect them to continue to recruit at a high level. And the football program seems to be in a good place right now, about to compete for a Big Ten West title in 2023. So those are my overall thoughts on that. As far as the decision or the walking back by Iowa to have the state front half the bill versus not, I thought that it was a very sound case by Robert Sand to say that the state of Iowa doesn't owe the university anything to front any part of this settlement. I mean, this wasn't, the taxpayers, and I know it's a drop of the bucket, but it's the principle. I mean, the people of Iowa, they had nothing to do with this. Iowa's making a ton of money right now through the Big Ten. They have enough to pay the full settlement.
So let's do this. Let's get a little bit more into the open air here and talk some players, some football. So let's talk about some of those guys I just mentioned and any other tidbits you have from the combines. Hawks are showing up and showing out very well.
Yeah, I think all of them helped their draft stock tremendously. I think Jack Campbell maybe more than anyone I've seen. Draft pundits talk about athletically, that was one of the most impressive combines that they've seen in a really long time, and I think that there might have been some questions about his athleticism, and I don't think there are any anymore. Sam Laporta completely blew me away with his 40 time and where he was testing in tight ends. Third fastest 40-yard dash, 4.58, which was really impressive. Lucas Van Ness, like you said, I think solidified himself as a top 15 pick. I just think athletically, he's too much of an athletic specimen to pass on. So I think that this is going to be a situation where I'm not going to say all draft eligible because there were some that didn't go to the combine, but all 5 Hawkeyes that went to the combine will be drafted. I feel confident saying that, and I think it's going to be a really impressive draft haul for Kirk Ferentz's group this year.
All exciting stuff, Kenny, getting us all fired up here. Great seeing you again. Thanks for doing this.
For sure.
He is Kenny Smith and does a great job reporting on the Iowa Hawkeyes, as you just heard, for the Des Moines Register, also Hawk Central, and as well as USA Today. So Kenny Smith, thanks to him. Also to former Iowa Hawkeye sharpshooting great Kent McCausland, and to my production partner, Michael Merrick. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. And thanks to you, the viewers. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you. And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.